May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get it and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Eric Larsen. He came to Zen Center in 1970, and the person there most important to him was Silas Hoadley. He didn't have any relationship with Shunryu Suzuki. And Silas was most important for him, but the community and, Eric was really good at everything he did. He was around some years. And, the next thing you know, he's a watershed expert and teaching at UC Davis. But actually, on the way there, and for a long while, he studied with three very important teachers that were around Zen Center. One of them was Alex Weygers. And you can, go to cuke.com and search for Alex Weygers. See about him. The Leonardo da Vinci of Carmel Valley. And Eric learned blacksmithing and tool making and sculpting from Alex, and set up a blacksmith shop at Green Gulch. And he studied sculpting and chainsaw sculpting with JB Blunk, who did a lot of work. Major work for Zen Center. He did some redwood, out of large redwood, gnarly redwood that wasn't really good for cutting lumber out of with burls and stuff in it. He made large seats, and out of them for Tassajara. He did the very large redwood sculpture when you walk into Green's restaurant. I don't know about now, but for years he had this large sculpture. I think it was a ring when you walk into the Oakland Museum. He had a big piece at Stevenson College. And, JB was a mentor to Eric. And JB had studied pottery with the famous Hamada in Japan, and was a friend with Isamu Noguchi, the famous architect. And the third is Harry Roberts, who was the Yurok shaman, who spent his final years at Yvonne Rand's in Muir Beach, and was close to many Zen students and an important advisor to Green Gulch Farm. And anyway, so Eric will talk about all that. Now, nothing has stopped him. In recent years, he's been involved with Butoh dance in Japan and in America. And if you go to cuke.com, you'll see EricLarsen. You'll see a page for him there, and it'll give links to his Butoh teachers and videos you can see. But he's in really good shape. Pretty impressive. Oh, and I should mention, he's involved with the Ring of Bones Zendo, started by Gary Snyder, with the teacher Nelson Foster, who's a Dharma heir of Robert Aiken. Anyway, so we'll give Eric called just as soon as we've had our pause to meditate, and he and I had two conversations. One, for some reason, I think he was leaving for Japan. I called him at midnight here, and I am almost always asleep by midnight, good Lord. And we talked till 3. And we had another talk for, I think it was 47 minutes. So I'm making those into 2 podcasts on Podbean and other outlets, YouTube, Spotify, etc. But, you know, I'm not going to have one of them be 3 hours and 147 minutes. At some point, this conversation just goes off a cliff, and then part 2 will start next week. So, listen, when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Eric Larsen a call.
Hey there.
Eric, how you doing?
Hi. I'm great, man. I'm just great. How are you?
Okay. We connect. Good. And
it's great, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I got you before you went back to Japan again.
Yeah. It's a beautiful day here in California. It's just the sun's coming up over the Coast Range. It was a little bit of a little cool last night. We had the door open because it just started to get hot here, you know. Yeah.
And where are you again?
I live about an hour north of San Francisco in a little town called Winters, which used to be kind of a farming town. It's about 20 minutes from Davis, where I taught at the university. So
yeah,
we got a house that was close by, and but we live right on a creek and look out over fields, and yet we're actually 3 blocks from the middle of the quote downtown, which is just a 3-block. Downtown is actually 3 blocks long, you know. So.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat.
Yeah. How about you? Where do you live?
Bali.
That's hard to picture. You know, I just picture some kind of a 1960s movie with handsome people with fake tans, you know.
Yeah, Bob Hope's Road to Bali. Well, yeah. I saw that movie. That was one of his very early movies, incidentally. And he and Bing Crosby, they didn't get to Bali in the movie. They were just on the road to Bali. I think maybe they were in Australia. I can't quite remember. So hey,
well, you beat them out. You made it there. That's good for you.
Yeah. So what did you teach at Davis?
You know, I taught about rivers, how rivers form in nature. It was one of my big draws was doing field research, to be able to go. My brother said, you know, your work is you go walk along the river and draw pictures, and you call it work. He said, you did that when you were 12 years old, you know.
Your brother Dane, right?
Yeah.
I remember him. Yeah. Why don't you tell us what you're going to do when you go to Japan, and how you got into all that? And I know one thing. I plan to put a link to your that video you've got on YouTube about it, but I've been waiting to talk to you. So Anyway, tell us about all that.
Oh yeah. That's I'm headed to Kyoto in 2 days, going back. And when I'm there, I'll be practicing and studying. You know, the word dance. I'm trying to find a better word for it. You know, David, I've been attracted to ritual. You know, since I can ever remember. And been attracted to finding out how ritual can transform us collectively, you know, how it might help a little bit, help others and help myself explore things that we can't explain rationally. I often said that when I went to the university, I tried to change people's minds about the environment, about how we treat the rivers and how we take care of our environment. And now I'm trying to change people's hearts, or you know, invite a change of heart. And I think if we have a change of heart, then we will treat things differently. And you see how this all kind of connects with our Zen practice too, you know. I think there's a lot of Zen practice that's, how can I say, not rational, really.
Yeah.
You know, Zen practice tells us we're fine and just as we are, and then it also says, you know, you got to work hard and get rid of all those messy things that come to you as a human, all those bad actions and bad thoughts, you know, and you're full of them. So that's a contradiction and irrational, but something that I think we understand inside us. So the quote unquote kind of performance I do, again, it's not performance, it's ritual. Okay, let me get back up one step here. So I'll be going and working with, this time I'll be working with a teacher who identifies himself with the Japanese style Butoh, which I can explain a little bit. But it's a kind of, they call it dance, that was founded in the late 50s, 58, 59, 57, something like that, essentially by two individuals, one Tatsumi Hijikata and the other one Kazuo Ono. And I think at first they were based in Tokyo, although Hijikata never left, never came to Europe or anything. And people often say it came out of the war experience because it's still called avant-garde dance. When you see pictures of it, we tend to paint our bodies white, and if you have to put words to why that is, which again, words are always suspect, and everything is just a made-up explanation, but teachers will often say that's to erase the personal self. You paint yourself white, and often people will shave their heads and actually shave their eyebrows off. So it's a pretty dramatic look, which makes it interesting to look at. But there is a reason there. But again, I won't give you any more explanations. It's just gives you kind of a visual of that that type of performance.
Well,
and,
can we see Butoh online?
You know, seeing Butoh online is like seeing a picture of a kiss.
Well, at least you know what a kiss is if you see a picture.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I would look up Hijikata, Tatsumi Hijikata, and see his. You know, I wouldn't look up all the derivatives after that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well,
yeah.
What I'd like you to do then is before you head out to Japan after our call, send me an email with his name, and a link would be nice, and for anything else we hit on here, like that video with that's about you and the dance or performance related to nuclear weapons or Hiroshima or whatever.
Right, right. That was very interesting, and maybe I can explain more about what I do by just telling the story of what I did.
Do.
Yeah, yeah. A few years ago, I was just tying up my work at the university, and I knew I wanted to return to dance. It's what I did before I ever came to Zen Center.
Oh, is that right?
When I was as a young man, right out of college. As you well know, the world was the world was wide open. You could do anything in 1967, 8, and 9, right? It's like, well, you want to do this, you want to do that. You know, we felt like the world was going to totally change, and we had the options of doing anything. And I had always been drawn to some kind of movement and something related to ritual and movement. So there was a dance teacher in New York City, actually quite a wonderful dance teacher, named Eric Hawkins, and I found out about him, and his dance was inspired by Native American ritual. He'd grown up on the Colorado border, I think between Colorado and New Mexico, if there is such a border. I just dreamed that up. But as a young man, he knew about those Native Americans, so he took off and spent a whole summer looking at all the Native American dances that he could back in his, Colorado area. And he decided, yes, a man can dance, you know. So he went back to New York and he started studying dance. And then he actually helped Martha Graham get on the map and founded the Martha Graham Company with her, really, because he was her first male dancer, and he inspired her, and she became very famous, and he didn't, but that's okay. He left her company after about 13 years and started his own, and I went to dance with Eric in New York as a young man because I thought he was doing ritual, ceremony, ritual, and it looks like that. But, you know, the New York stage experience is the New York stage experience. It's not, getting up at dawn in your tribe with your people. So I left New York, and that's when I bumped into Zen. And then.
What year was that?
It was probably 1969.
Yeah.
Probably late 1969. So then, to bring this story back to where I went off the rails here, when I was tying things up at the university, I said, I could do this. It was almost like a resurgence of that feeling that we had in the 60s. It's like, you know what? The world is wide open. And someone said, well, you should try. There's this Butoh teacher, actually, one who danced with the founder, lives in Berkeley. Why don't you go see that? And I'd never heard of Butoh in my life. So I went over to her house, Tamano, Koichi and Hiroko Tamano. And like in the first hour, it's like, oh, I get this. Oh, yeah, well, this is like what I want to do. This is it. Yeah, I got it. And I don't know, 5 weeks later, she said, you want to perform? And, well, sure. And I did my first performance like 5 weeks after I'd heard about the form, Like, wow. And so I'm finally getting to the story I started to tell. About a year later, an old dance friend from New York said, she was a dancer in Eric's company. I never actually danced in the company. I just apprenticed. But she somehow said, I'm going to be going to Japan. My husband's Japanese. We're going to be going to this nuclear museum in Tokyo that honors the Daigo Fukuyu Maru incident, 1954 incident, where the United States bombed the Bikini Islands as a test with a bomb 100 times more powerful than the one at Hiroshima. And they forgot to tell people that they were doing it, and a boat was irradiated with nuclear ash. And so I got to go to that. I paid my way to Tokyo. And I'm going to take another side story here, because the word Tokyo just flashed something in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was a child in Tokyo. My father was in the United States Air Force, and we lived in Tokyo in 1952, 1953, and 1954. So my first stories, like some people, I don't know, Little Red Riding Hood or something like that, maybe your first story or somebody's first story. My first story was Momotaro, the
oh yeah,
story of Peach Boy. So I was I think I was infused with Japanese culture as a child. I mean, we lived in the Japanese area of Tokyo. I walked down the street and there was a Shinto shrine on the corner, like there is in every corner.
Hey, wait a minute. You just said you lived in a Japanese area of Tokyo. Tokyo is.
Well,
you mean you weren't living on the base?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you know what happened in Tokyo or not, but we took over Yoyogi Park as Americans. I mean, that's a long story, and you got to keep me on track, David, because you can see I'm all over the map here. But
no, I don't know about that. But I'll tell you one thing about that boat with the Japanese fishermen who were irradiated. I think one of them died, right? One, and before they got back.
Well, one died immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, and that boat was out of Yaizu, where Suzuki Roshi's temple was.
How interesting.
Yeah, and he joined a protest march against the dropping of the Bikini bomb and all that. Mm-hmm. And people tried to stop him because they said there's going to be communists in the march. And he said, well, I don't care if they're against the nuclear bombs. I'll march with them. Anyway, so I just thought you might enjoy knowing that.
Oh, no, it makes me feel like I was marching along with him, It was, it's tragic. It's tragic. I mean, the stories about that incident, there are many stories, but they're not surprising. I mean, when Japan got in touch with the United States, and I don't say this in the documentary film there, but basically the United States got in touch with all of the victims and paid them a chunk of money if they would just be quiet and not talk about it for the rest of their life.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Bought them off,
Yeah. Oh, I want to tell you one other thing. I won't interrupt you again.
No, it's okay.
When I was working on the nuclear freeze, we met with city council people, different ones of us. And I met with one of the conservative ones with a couple of hardcore left-wing, old lefties from Berkeley who were older than me. I was 35 or something, 37. And, they were just, they just didn't get along with him at all. And he was ex-Navy. And so they left, and I stayed in his office and talked to him, and we got along. And he had been involved with the hydrogen bomb tests in the South Pacific. One thing I always found, if you just listen to these people, they'll tell you stuff, And if you try to lecture to them, you won't get anything out of them. And he told me what he saw, what impressed him the most was when the bomb went off to see all the flaming birds in the sky.
Oh, David. Oh, yeah, just listen and you hear the most amazing things, huh?
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm. Mm. Well, the more I get to know about this, the more, it encourages me to keep up trying to do ritual and ceremony, with people and with others. I'm scheduled to perform at the end of May in Fukuoka, and it's not perform. The group I'm working with is like for want of a better word, it's like a sangha or a family. There's about 10 or 12 students who've been working with Harada-san, or sensei, who's the teacher, who's a year younger than I am. You know how it is, David.
Yeah.
With age. When I met him, it was like meeting an old friend. And I met him for the first time last year. And he said, at the change of seasons 4 times a year, we get together, we spend 3 or 4 days working together, and then we perform for each other in a very small little studio in Fukuoka. And they invite friends, and there's like 20 people in the back of the studio. So it's almost like a ceremony, David, where you've been working with the same group of people for a year or so, and then you spend 4 or 5 days living together, eating together, where the meal is just as important as what we call the performance. It's not separate. And my perhaps romanticized image of it, it's like the old days when people got together around the hearth and told stories to each other. And again, my faith is that these stories will bring about a change of heart. And then a change of heart will lead to all the things that people try and argue and explain and coerce about. If you have a change of heart, then your mind will change on its own. You don't have to try and convince somebody intellectually about something. So that's my exploration now. That's my main work right now, is to explore that kind of experience. So anyway, when I said living in the Japanese part of Tokyo, which just sounded weird, didn't it? I had discovered later that the main park in Tokyo, Yoyogi Park, is a large, beautiful park. What I found out was that when we occupied in the early 50s Japan and Tokyo, we came to Tokyo and said, oh, that's a cool place. That's a big place. It's all empty right in the middle of Tokyo. We'll take that. And then if you look, there's actually a couple YouTube videos of documentaries from that time. They're so proud. I say, isn't that interesting? I'm talking about the United States. They are so proud, and they say, look, when you enter the gate here, it's like entering a town in Cleveland, Ohio. There's the movie theater. There's the convenience store. You would never know that you're not in Cleveland. And they had like 1,000 homes. They built tract homes and just took over the park. It's like weird.
I have a question.
Reverted.
I thought you said you lived in the Japanese part, P-A-R-T, of Tokyo.
Well,
are you saying you lived in the Japanese
no.
park, B-A-R-K?
No. We lived in the Japanese part of Tokyo. Actually, we lived in was Shibuya, which doesn't sound, very romantic now, but Shibuya is where all the embassies were, and the embassy housing was in Shibuya. But I got in a bus every day, and I was bused down to Yoyogi to go to school. Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, what a weird history, that you go into a country and you say, well, I'll take that, and I'll take that, and I'll take that, and, and by the way, you need to sign an agreement that you'll never have an army, and if you need to ever nuke somebody, we'll do it for you, It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I explore those feelings through movement, and then I have training now, lots of training, as much as 4 years can give you. Actually, it's very shallow training, in how to do these rituals or these ceremonies in a more public way, so that hopefully people experience it. So I usually don't talk about very much about what I'm doing, and then often people will come up afterwards and say, "The hell was that?" And I say, I have a little stack of books. You perhaps know a book that was published a long time ago, 1,000 Cranes. You know that book?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I bought up all the secondhand ones I could possibly do, and I carry them with me, and then I give them to people. Because, it's ostensibly a children's story, but it brings tears to your eyes when you read it. And there's no blame there. Again, it's one of those stories that I hope will transform the heart. When someone reads that, they just, all of a sudden, they feel something that all sorts of explanations could never touch, So, and I have to be honest, too. I like moving. I've always liked moving. So just the sheer joy of moving my body, even if it's sometimes exploring difficult things, is something that I'm drawn to. So, in a nutshell, that's the reason I do it.
Well, I saw the YouTube video. What's it called?
The one that I did. There was a documentary in Japan.
Yeah, it's very well made.
Yeah, one of the men who came to Tokyo was a filmmaker, and he actually interviewed me but never used it in his footage. And so I got in touch with him a couple of years later and said, that interview you did of me standing behind the boat, could you just put together a little documentary about what we did for me, kind of featuring me, so it explains my work? And he said, sure. Chris Fiore, a filmmaker in New York, did that. And I forget what he titled it. He didn't really ask me what to title it, but it would have to be something like, I don't know, David, I've forgotten the name of it.
You mean the one on YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh,
the one that
we'll figure out. So when I put the podcast up, I'll be able to link to it. I mean, I've got a link. I just looked at old. I can't remember who told me about you doing that. But it's in their email. I can probably find it on YouTube.
Well, good. Yeah. I'll get it for you. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll get it to you. Not a problem.
Anyway, well, and anything like that, tell me about. No, one thing I want to say while it's on my mind is Shodo Harada Roshi in Okayama. Have you ever heard of him at Sogenji?
Yeah.
I'd like to connect you with Chisan, who's been, translating for him and working with him for, I don't know, 40 years, 50 years. She was a fellow student with him of Mumon Yamada years ago. Anyway, I don't think it's impossible you could do a Butoh at the temple there. It's a big temple. In fact, I read once it's the largest temple in Western Japan.
Oh my gosh.
Or maybe it's the largest Zen temple or something. But anyway, it's big. And when I lived next door to there 3.5 years, and there were we had some performances and things. And but anyway, I'd like to connect you and at least maybe you could meet him. But I think it's there are some possibilities there. Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Thank you.
Well, why don't we go back and talk about what led you to the Zen Center?
Oh, that's so cool, Brian. I mean, David. Well, when I left New York, I hitchhiked back from New York back to California, where I had gone to high school and where I'd lived for a long time. But on my way, I stopped at Cambridge, where my brother was going to school at Harvard, and slept on his floor for a while. And I had started meditating about a year before that, where I would just sit, sort of the influence from Be Here Now and the early, all that stuff that was in the air. I would cross my legs and sit, but I had never really thought about Zen or anything.
Well, your influence wasn't from Be Here Now, if that was before Be Here Now came out.
Was it? Oh well, it was the Be Here Now that was in the air. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought anyway. So I was sitting, and then my brother said, "Oh, there's these people who up over in Elliott House or something. They do this thing in the morning where they sit like you're doing. You should just go see them.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out it was a tiny little Zen group. It was meeting in an attic, and years later, I figured out it was Ken Kraft. You maybe know Ken, or who he was, or is, or he ended up being a scholar of Zen and taught and published books.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a little group, and
do you know what lineage or what teacher there was?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure, I do. It's because that's the next part of my story. Because they said, our teacher is going to come and give a big seminar on the weekend, a 2-day seminar, and it was Philip Kapleau.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So
there's other people from Zen Center that sat there.
Yeah. So I went to this thing, and Kapleau was enchanting, and gosh, there must have been like 100 of us in this. It was at Memorial Hall at Harvard, and just everything he said was, well, I get that. Yeah. You just sit and you kind of like, I get that. Makes sense. That's kind of like what I'm drawn to. I didn't know there was a thing that was so formal, because I thought you just did it, but and concentrated on between your eyes or something, and blew the top of your head off or whatever. But but I was careful because I'd experienced some pretty intense things, throughout my life that were mysterious, that were verged on scary. So I was always very cautious when I was meditating on my own. But then when I went, Zen, I'll try that. That'll be cool. So I said, I'll study Japanese, I'll get back to California, and then I'll go to Japan. That was my goal. So I I stayed another month at Harvard, and my brother scammed me into the basement where you could study Japanese by in a booth, with earphones and stuff. And so I spent a month intensely studying Japanese so that I could get to Japan. And I guess getting to Japan was like you read Kapleau's book or hear him, and it sounds like it's all really happening in Japan, and it's very mysterious and powerful and wonderful. So that was my romantic image. So I came back to California and meditating under trees. And there's some really funny stories. My meditation was misguided because I didn't have much. Well, I'll tell you the story. When I was sitting with Ken and there was one other person that was there. Partway through meditation, partway through Zazen, they would go, I only assume what they were really doing, but what I do know for a fact was they would go, and I'm like, that's powerful. So I assume they were, breathing moo. I don't know, but I'm just assuming that's what they were doing. And I have heard from people that the Kapleau school sometimes would be encouraged to go out and yell moo, and anyway, whatever.
Oh yeah, they did a lot of extreme stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm living in Bolinas, right, in my van and meditating every day. And partway through my meditation, I would just go, having no idea what I'm doing. But
yeah.
Hey, if they did it, I'll do it, right?
Yeah.
So, as I was prepared, my whole life in Bolinas is a really good story we should talk about sometime. You know Bolinas well, and I actually owned land in Bolinas. That was another story, but let's get back to the Zen. So I'm sitting and I'm thinking, well, I gotta have some kind of Zen things in San Francisco someplace. So I looked up and I found that there was a Chinese Chan Center in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to go see the Chance Center. Just, might as well just tap it in while I'm getting ready to go to Japan. And I hitchhiked in. I hitchhiked everywhere those days. And they let me off at the Mint.
Yeah.
And I went to a phone book, which is what you did in those days, right, to figure out places, and in a phone booth. And somehow I saw that the Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, was really close to me, and the Chan Center wasn't so close. So I said, well, I'm going to go check that place out first before I go to the Chan Center.
Yeah.
So I walked over to Page Street, and walked in the door. Went to what they used to have. It was like a front desk, it's almost like, And I said, I would like to see the Zen master, please. oh boy. Anyway, they said, well, he's sick, but you could see one of his senior students if you'd like to. And I said, oh, okay, sure. And that's when I first met Silas.
Oh. Hmm.
It was so incredible, David. I mean, it wasn't incredible. It was, here we are 50 years later. It changed my life, meeting Silas, And, in a way that's simple and real and unspeakable, really. Anyway, I went up to his room, and I mean, he like you, giving me full range to talk here, and just encouraging me, and I mean, like you're doing right now. It was like what Silas did. He just made me feel whole, and I felt, like most of us. I'm just speaking for anyway. Like some, at least, I felt out of place in our society at that point in life. It's like I don't want to do what people are doing, go into business and get a job, and this is just Silas made me feel like I'm okay. I'm not strange. I'm not weird. And it's really hard to remember him,
Yeah, he just died recently, as you well know. I think December 22nd or something.
Yeah, right. When you and I were talking about him, and I was planning on calling Bill so that I could just connect,
Yeah, Bill Porter. Yeah, that's how I talked to Silas, was through Bill Porter.
Right.
The last couple of years.
I had Silas and Bill and I had spent a number of times together. I went up and saw Silas a few times in Port Townsend, and of course, he'd trot over to Bill. We'd trot over to Bill's, and and sometimes watch football. Bill loves football. Anyway, but so I know Bill, from that, and he's one of the things that I connect with Silas too. So anyway, back to the story. And then I was walking out the door after Silas, just encouraged me, and that's all. It was like, wow. And I just felt that feeling that you could maybe feel from me. And I start to come out to head for the front door at Page Street, right? And to my left is what they used to call the Butoh Hall. I don't know if it's still that or not.
Yeah,
right?
Sure it is.
Yeah. So, and then sitting on a tatami mat over there's a bunch of people, and I think they were sewing, okay? And some guy, this is the story that I have in my head. Some guy kind of yells, "Hey man, what you doing?" And I go, "Oh, just visiting." And he goes, "Hey man, you want to work sometimes? We're working here sometimes. Come back sometime. See ya. Bye bye." That was you.
That was me?
Yeah, it was you. Yeah. And I went, well, that was a nice guy. God, I don't feel like I want to work in the culture that's out there, but I'd work with that guy. He's kind of cool. so that was it. I came back sometime later, and you were the work leader, I think.
That was 1972.
Okay. Well, Suzuki was alive when I met you.
Yeah.
That first day when I met Silas.
Yeah.
Was that 70?
Well,
that wasn't 72.
No, but I was work leader in 72. If you met me when you first came, I was just visiting from Tassajara. Because
I got you.
I lived at Tassajara until Suzuki died.
I got you.
But I'd come to the city. I'd be in the city.
So you were visiting.
You know, I could have been there for an interim, for a board meeting, any number of things.
Yeah. Anyway, you have, as many people, I think, remark, you just have a friendly, open way, and also not so stiff. It was just like, oh, that guy's cool. He's hanging. I could do this. I think I'll come back and work with him. That'd be fun. So,
good.
Yeah. So that was it, and then Philip started coming about that time too, and Philip was encouraging too.
Philip Whalen.
Yeah. Philip.
Yeah, that's true. Philip Whalen moved into the building very early in 1972, across the hall from me.
Oh, interesting.
In the building, yeah. I mean, directly, our doors, you open my door, look straight ahead, that's his door. So, that was very lucky for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, you guys must have been obviously good friends, huh? You got to know him pretty well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Other people got to know him better. But we definitely related and kept relating through the years.
Yeah. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So that was my introduction to Zen Center. Obviously, I never made it to Japan until, really that documentary you're talking about of me being at the Daigo Fukumaru Museum was the first time I got invited back as a scientist to go to Sapporo in the 90s, 94 maybe.
Uh-huh.
But when I went to Tokyo, it was the first time I got to Japan after aiming there, before Zen Center.
Wow. And that was in what year?
Which one, David?
When you went back for the dance?
Well, that was probably 2018 or 19.
Right.
Maybe
right.
2019.
4 years ago when you started that. Well, that far out. Well, tell me more about, let me ask you one thing about your experience at Zen Center. Were you involved in getting the ashes site ready for, the Suzuki Roshi ashes ceremony and all that?
No.
Were you involved in getting the loan of the winch, which we used, not me, I wasn't involved with it, to get the big stone up on top?
No.
All right, because I'm talking to people about that, and one of them thought maybe that was you're the one who arranged that.
No, but I do have a story about ashes and winches, and that was the big stone for Alan Watts that was put up on the hill at Green Gulch.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I was work leader, and this big stone came from Tassajara, I think, on a truck. I think Dan Welch organized that or something. I have some vague memory. And here's this big stone, and we have to take it up this dirt road, small, narrow dirt road on a steep hill, up to a site way up in the hills. And how are we going to get that big stone from here up to there? And we brainstormed, and I remember 2 attempts. The first attempt was, maybe a helicopter. Well, I explored that, and it was too heavy for any helicopter that could do it. Or maybe I probably could have found one that was, $30,000 for one trip or something. But at any rate, the helicopter was out.
Right.
And then, well, we still had the horses at that point at Green Gulch. So put it on a sled, make a metal sled, put the rock on a sled. You got this team of horses. They drag things. We'll drag it up the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So we organized that. We made the sled.
What'd you make it sled out of?
I remember it was metal. I mean, I organized and built a welding shop there, blacksmith and welding shop.
Yeah.
Because I had that blacksmith training from Alex Weygers. So I built that. So I probably helped weld a sled. It was just a big old piece of sheet metal is what I remember. And then you get throw the rock on it and strap it on probably and get the horses to haul it.
Yeah.
So we got that organized, and we got the horses, and we go up, and partway up, one of the horses slipped and kind of went off the side of the road. Now, obviously the horse didn't hurt itself, or I remember that, but it was a failed attempt because it was too narrow, and a horse fell off, Okay. Yeah. And, of course, there's a big ceremony already organized, and it's already advertised for a certain day where we're going to have a memorial for Alan Watts. And it's like, well, maybe not, because once the rock got up there had to be some stuff going on. I think Dan actually cited it, if I recall. But to make a long story short, I just said, you know what? Why don't we I think it was like one of the Sundays, I said, we got a lot of great people that come and volunteer. Why don't we just get 50 people on a rope and haul it up there with people? And that's what we did eventually.
Oh, that's great. And you had a pretty good rope, huh?
Oh, yeah, a big honking rope, big honking rope. But, kind of everybody tug, but you get enough people, you just haul that thing up there. So.
Oh, that is great. That is great. And how was the weather for that ceremony?
Oh, well, the ceremony must have come much later, but at least a couple of weeks later, because Dan had to figure out where the ashes were going to be poured and site the rock and do all of that, just getting it up there. But I don't know if you knew the weather, and that was a leading question, but it was some of the worst weather I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I remember.
Oh, you know what? I'm confused. I don't remember the weather for Alan's ceremony, but we had a ceremony, probably in the same nation, for Chris Persig. It was Chris Persig where the weather was.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of, too. And I didn't know what it was. That's Chris. What I'm thinking of, too. Because Wendy Persig works with us, with Cuke Archives, his stepmother, and she wrote a whole long piece, like 100 pages, on her and Bob Pierce's experience at Zen Center with Chris dying and everything. And it's on Cuke.com, and part of it is telling about that ceremony for Chris, and how I was just, downpour rain. That's it.
Oh, it was sideways rain. I mean, it was cold. It was sideways. And I remember his dad, Bob, saying, this is so appropriate. We were up there. We're holding umbrellas. We're drenched. And Bob saying, this is so appropriate. Chris led a stormy life, and here he is, going out with a storm. Chris and I worked together. Chris and I had a lot of nice times together when he stayed at Green Gulch. I was very fond of Chris. It was tragic. In fact,
yeah, no kidding.
I
it was.
I have I have a statue that's 5 feet from me right now that I carved the day Chris, well, as a memorial for Chris. I used to be a carver. You know, Alex taught me to carve also. And this is kind of an Inku knockoff. Let me read on the back of it. Oh, my God. I haven't turned this over in decades. Dedicated to the memory of Chris Persig.
Send us a photo or 2 or 3 of that, would you?
Sure. It's one of my favorite. Actually, it's like I said, it's kind of an Inku knockoff that I carved.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
And one of them should include you.
Okay.
I think Wendy would really like to see that.
Yeah, the writing on the back is fading.
And, you know, today is Ted Piercing's birthday.
Oh, who's Ted?
His brother, Chris's brother.
Oh, never met him, no. Boy, David, what stories, huh?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, and that's true, the stories that you have to tell. I wish I were interviewing you and listening, but maybe another time I can hear more about you.
Oh, yeah, I talk about myself enough. I don't need to hear it.
I know you don't, but I think I'd love it.
Well.
Oh gosh.
All right. So how long were you at Zen Center?
I think I came in about 1970, and also I never actually lived at the city center. I went straight to Tassajara.
Yeah, I remember you at Tassajara.
Yeah. And then I believe I left in 1984. So 14 years as a resident.
Wow.
Yeah.
I went back in 85 for 3 years at Green Gulch. I was there 2 years and in the city a year.
Interesting. And did you ever live in Bolinas? Did you live with Liz, or did that?
Yeah, I lived in Bolinas 9 years with Liz, and Liz Twomey, wonderful, wonderful 9 years.
Yeah.
And I always had another place. I had a little cabin in Yvonne's, you might remember. You remember the you know, by the creek there, like right next to the house next door that Mayumi had. There was a little cabin.
You know, I don't remember the cabin. I used to live in that house before Yvonne bought it.
When Nils and Maggie owned it?
Just after they sold it to Zen Center. Not just after, but sometime after they sold it to Zen Center. I think Yvonne lived in the main part of the house, and I lived in the other part with my then wife, Terry, you know? Yeah.
Oh.
So I lived down there right near the creek, yeah.
Oh, you know what that reminds me of? When you got married at that wonderful park place in San Anselmo, I couldn't make it. And I was so disappointed. And it was this great event that so many people went to. When was that?
You know, my wife should kick me for not knowing the exact date. And actually, let me just tell a little story about that. That was a reception. We actually got married in the woods right outside, down in the meadow at Ring of Bones, Endo. With about 30 people. Nelson performed the ceremony for us, and we actually owned a house there right near Gary Snyder's, and right in the neighborhood. Yeah, I bought a house there.
And Nelson Foster did the wedding. Wow.
Yeah, and Nelson and I I was at a session last week with Nelson on the East Coast. So I've been working with Nelson for 35 years on a weekly basis.
Wow.
I feel so blessed. Yeah.
Wow.
He's a good man.
Hmm. Well, did you get married uh, in the like 95 or around there?
Yeah. Well, see, Evan was born in '97, so we must have been married in '95.
Yeah. I was living
Yeah.
in Gerstle Park in San Rafael, and
Uh-huh.
I can't remember why I couldn't go, but it's one of the, every once in a while something happens I really feel bad that I miss. Like one thing I missed was Layla Bachhorst's funeral,
Yeah, I did.
being there
Yeah.
on Zoom, uh, oh God, I don't know, a month or two ago. And I didn't make that, and I was very disappointed about that. Mm. But
Yeah, I heard
anyway,
about it afterwards. Yeah, I wish I'd been there too. That was my generation, you know.
yeah. Anyway, those things happen. I remember my son Clay said to me, I used to take Clay with me to visit older people in convalescent homes or just older students, like Betty and Della and Claude and stuff. And
Yeah.
so and so he had a sense of being with people, meeting them before they died, and that sort of thing.
Ah.
And he mentioned to me that he felt bad, and then he was pretty young then. He was maybe still a teenager, and he said he really felt bad because he didn't see so and so before they died. And I said, well, get used to it. You try as hard as you can. There could be a lot of things you miss you'll regret. Just don't
Yeah.
regret it too much. Let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Regret's an important feeling, you know, so that we can next time I'll maybe change a little bit, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, look, you got any highlights at Tassajara you want to share at Zen Center?
Well, you know, I was kind of anticipating that, and so many people at Zen Center were kind to me and influenced me. You know, the friendships that come, and I felt like I was struggling at Tassajara emotionally and I mean physically too a little bit, but mostly emotionally. And I don't even want to name a single name because there were so many kindnesses, David. Befriending me, companioning me. I mean, I get flooded with images of people's faces and experiences, you know. And then one of the highlights was meeting JB Blunk, of course, there.
Yeah.
And then becoming friends with JB, to eventually spending time with him out in Inverness at his house. I would just, when I felt just kind of out of sorts, I would go up and live with he and Christine for a few days, you know.
No kidding.
So,
well, that's really something if he let you, because, he wasn't open to everybody.
No. I felt he took me on, you know, just as a close friend.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. It really did. We were very, very close.
I met him through Sim Vandren, and I started going out there.
Sim lived across the street, right? Yeah.
Well, they lived next door. There wasn't a street between them. There was
it was woods, right?
They were at the dead end of the street, and where Gordon Oslo Ford lived over there, and Nature Conservancy land started in Inverness up in the hills. So, I'd go out and visit Sim, and Sim took me over and introduced me to JB, and I just loved all his woodwork and everything, and I got into that. And I paid to have him come to Tassajara as a guest because I wanted to get him involved. And sometimes, I suggested so many things, nobody would want to hear it, and Dick was often a little more responsive to what people in his salon would suggest. So I just got him in there, and he met Dick. Dick learned about what he did. Next thing I knew, I was going with him to select wood for those amazing seating sculpture he made there.
And then, and he invited me. I got to be his assistant as my work at Tassajara.
Oh wow!
So I helped carve those benches. I mean, I did some of the finishing and some of the roughing out. And,
that is cool. That is cool.
Yeah, and yet he taught me to make a bowl. So I used to, when the day was over, I'd take a chainsaw and go down to the flats or something. I forget where I went, and would carve a bowl. I still have the bowl. That's an interesting story. The bowl I carved, I gave to Green Gulch in the 70s. And I used to see it there. They used to put fruit or bread in it every time I would go, like once a decade. And then it disappeared one day. And then someone said, oh, it broke. There's a crack in it. And I went, oh, okay, And then somebody scored it for me. And that's when JB was still alive. And I asked him, how can I fix this? And he said, stitch it with copper wire and make sure the stitches show. So I have the bowl in my house now that I made, under his influence. And
that's neat.
It was used for 30 years, so it has this patina, of use. And
it has
the copper wire. I'll send you a picture of that too.
Wow. Oh yeah,
do.
Did you visit him when he was, losing his memory?
No. The years went by, and I, got married and did stuff, and then I do remember calling one day, and he answered, and he said, I said, how you doing? And he said, not so well, Eric. He said, I'm losing my memory. It's really hard. And we talked, and then that was the last time, and I think. I don't know how this occurred. I found out about his dad, Ed Brown.
You wait a minute. I didn't hear that. You found out about
JB's death from Ed Brown and how he died.
Well, tell me what Ed told you. Tell me what Ed told you.
Well, the structure of the story was that JB wanted to end his own life with I don't know what a polite word for it, but suicide, self stuff, and had Christine help him with that. And that was 20 years ago, I think, David, if I can.
Oh, yeah, at least. And he wanted Richard Baker to be involved with it. Dick told me about this. And I can't remember I don't think Dick wanted to do anything official, but I can't remember if he was there or not. I didn't know anything about it at the time. The last time I saw JB, it was almost like I wasn't sure he knew who I was, or it wasn't. I'd lost him. He might have remembered who I was, but he didn't want to visit her really, and it was sad.
It is sad. It's really interesting. There's a great, a really great. It's such a silly word. There's a potter, not actually a potter, a guy who runs a gallery in Kyoto, Robert Yellen. It's a lovely, lovely little thing. It's really his house. It's in front of his house, and he's got pots on the tatamis. And first time I visited Robert, I was sitting on the tatami. It's like, it must have been an 8 or 10 mat raised area, and there's pots everywhere. There's like 30, 40 pots on the tatami, and you sit next to the pots, and I picked up one. I said, oh, wow, this is cool. I like it. And I'm looking at it. He said, yeah, that was made in 800. And I take a deep breath and put it back on the tatami.
Wow.
So Robert runs a kind of a gallery, and he, and I've never spent less than an hour and a half with him there drinking 2 or 3 cups of tea, looking at pots, handling pots. He said, my real goal is to educate people. He said, but
wait a minute.
someone comes
His
in
real
and we can
goal
talk
is
about
to
pottery,
what?
and I can,
I didn't hear that.
Really, we can just experience this together. That's my goal.
Wait a minute. What did he say his real goal was?
The reason I brought it up was when I was with him in November last year at his little gallery. It's right on the Tetsugaku no Michi, if you know the Kyoto. Anyway, he somehow I mentioned JB. He goes, JB Blunk? I go, yeah. He said, whoa, he's super famous. And he said, they've just published this book on him. Look at this, and he disappears through the door and comes back with a book. Anyway, he's become quite famous 20 years after his death, David. I don't know if you know that or not, but particularly in Japan, because he worked with Noguchi, Isamu.
Yeah.
And also with Hamada, the great potter Hamada. Yeah. He's good friends with Isamu, and there's pictures of him with Isamu, and maybe pictures of him with Hamada.
Isamu Noguchi.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, most people won't know what Isamu means.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. So I have a whole set of beautiful, beautiful ceramic work that JB gave me. JB once said to me, when I wanted some work, he said, I only do two ways. I either charge you full price or I give it to you. So I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And someone said, I looked up the ceramics and these things are worth like $1,000 a piece or something, Yeah, but they're mine that JB gave me.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. All right. Now, that's one person you worked with. I want to move to another one. In 1974, I think, I drove Richard Baker to meet Alex Weygers. And I said, you're about to meet the Leonardo da Vinci of Carmel Valley. And he said, don't exaggerate. And I said, I'm not. And you know what? I have a whole thing on Weygers on Cuke.com. I'd love it if you wrote something to add to it. In fact, you might have already done so. I don't know what's there anymore.
No, I didn't.
Anyway, I found a 1935 San Francisco Chronicle article on him that called him the Leonardo da Vinci of Carmel Valley. Isn't that cool?
It is cool, David.
Yeah.
I'm glad for your eye, and your passion and enthusiasm for people is just you have similar taste to me, so it's pretty spot on. I just love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Alex,
but you see, I was a friend and promoter of Alex's. I wasn't a student. You became a student. I think Peter Parch introduced me to Alex. You must know Peter Parch.
Well, I only met Peter through, I don't know if she was married to him, whoever, remember?
Penny, huh? Penny?
Well, say it again.
Penny?
No. There was a woman at Zen Center. I mean, a woman at Tassajara. We were fellow students together at Tassajara, and it turns out she had formerly, I think, been married to Peter. Anyway, she was later married. Who was also actually a potter. It's interesting, but he became a baker, and they've been married, and I assume they're still married. I'm talking about tall man, big man. Helped get the bakery going, perhaps. Became a baker in the early days, 70s, 80s. Anyway, she's
Peter Overton.
And anyway, it's Peter Overton. Yeah, and what was his wife?
Susan. Oh,
yeah,
you're
Susan.
right. Peter Parch was married to Susan Overton?
I believe so.
Oh, I
before
forgot
she came to
all
Tassajara.
about that.
I think so. Or at least she either knew him very well or was married at one point. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I forgot all about that. He married
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
And when I knew him, I didn't know him well, but somehow I dropped by and see them when I was on a town trip and stuff. And he told me I had to
Mm-hmm.
meet Weygers, and that
Yeah.
was great. That was great.
I spent, I lived with Alex and Marion there, and apprenticed with him, learned blacksmithing, I wanted to learn sculpture, but he immediately had me making my own chisels, so I had to learn blacksmithing to learn sculpture. And you're right. I mean, one of those incredible masters, just with depth of skill. He had trained in Italy with sculptors in Italy in the old style of sculpting.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that right?
Yeah,
Oh.
no, and he had his technique, the pinch technique, or I don't know what it is. It's probably a traditional one of clay modeling. He taught me to clay model first, and I made a number of clay models that I then cast. I used to cast Buddhas for Green Gulch, and I don't think any of them still exist. They plaster kind of, you stick them outdoors, the plaster doesn't last. And which just brings us up to another person. I'll just throw the name out. When Harry Roberts and I became close, Harry taught me to cast.
Yeah. I was going to hit on Harry after Alex.
Well, he taught me to make rubber molds and then cast so that I could cast the clay models that I did. Anyway, Alex would teach us the clay model. And it's like, no, I want to sculpt. I want to carve. And he goes, patience. You learn to clay model, and carving is the same thing sort of in reverse, because with clay modeling, you put one pinch on at a time, and then you kind of, okay, that feels, no, what over here? One pinch here. And with sculpting, you take one shaving off at a time. So it's kind of the reverse process. So I was very close to Alex. He actually asked me, one of those really, just made me really proud of myself. I was a little surprised. He asked me to move in and take over his studio as he was older.
Yeah. Well, that's how I met him. He wanted to pass it on.
Yeah.
And he was hoping Zen Center would take it. And
I declined,
Yeah, you declined. Zen Center couldn't take it on. And you know why he said that is he had a neighbor who was an artist and had a homemade home, that the whole piece was just a treasure. And it was, at least an acre or a bunch of land like Alex had. And he gave it to the Monterey Art Society or whatever to preserve it. And they just subdivided it, And I mean, but they didn't really have any choice. I mean, they might have been able to do a thing where it wouldn't be able to be subdivided or whatever, but it's too much to take on. And that's what Alex wanted. And I know that a number of you that were you in the group of people he taught blacksmithing?
I never was in a group, but I worked with him privately.
Yeah, well, there were a number of people who studied blacksmithing with him who had met and talked about trying to preserve his place, but nobody could. Did you know Andrew Atkinson?
Oh yeah,
Andrew
he was a little later than I. He was a little later than I. I think he went on to actually pursue blacksmithing fairly.
Oh yeah, Andrew's done fantastic metal sculpture. He's done a lot of stainless steel sculpture. You can see it on Cube.com.
Okay, I'd like to. That's I remember that. That's wonderful.
I don't know how much I have. but yeah, he learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex did 5 books for Random House, I think.
Yeah, or Norton. I remember the word Norton in it. I don't know if that was anyway, but yeah.
Oh, maybe it wasn't was it Norton Publisher or something? Anyway,
It doesn't matter.
5 books.
The two. There was a couple on blacksmithing and one on sculpture. One
on tool making.
Tool making, yeah. At some point, I was an assistant for Alex's courses. Alex would invite me to be his assistant, so he would go off and do something, and then I would teach a little section, and I would be like a TA for him, you know. So I got to, and I was my sort of academic mania that I've had all my life. You know, I tried to memorize every single step the way he taught it in stages. You know, he had a very clear teaching technique where you would do this, you would do this, you would do this, you would do this, you would do this. And so I memorized each step, and so he knew he could rely on me to do it exactly the way he did it. So
wow, that is interesting. You know, he came from a place that's not very far from here in Eastern Java.
Wow. Wow, I knew that.
He was Dutch Indonesian.
Right.
And I've looked on the map to see where it is. And, you know, Bali's just right next to Java. Yeah. And you remember that sculpture he had, or at least he had pictures of it, of the Indonesian family, the wife, the husband, and they were 2 sides. It was wooden sculpture. No, I don't know if it was wooden. And on the back was the water buffalo. That was all one piece of wood.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. He was just amazing. And so craft. I mean, such a detailed craft of what he did, you know.
He gave me some end grain etchings of his, very beautiful and extremely detailed. The waves.
Oh.
Do you remember the waves coming up?
Yeah.
You could see through the waves.
Myself.
Huh?
I have one of those myself.
Oh, great.
Same one, David. I have one. Yeah.
Great.
And you know, he made that from wood that he cut. I mean, he was so, excuse me, you know, he cut the pear tree and then got the ingrain pear wood that he cured so that he could carve on the ingrain pear wood that he had cut with the tools that he had made to actually make the art piece.
I don't know if this is true because he didn't tell me, but somebody told me. They said that he's made car parts when he needed a part for his car.
I have no doubt whatsoever, because he said, he said when he, you know, part of his early training was he was the blacksmith, if you will, on a ship. And when a part on the ship failed, he would make the part to replace it while they were in the ocean.
Okay. So that's pretty good.
So it makes total sense that he would make a part for his car. I mean, total sense. He had a metal lathe, and I mean, he knew how to do that stuff. You know.
He and Marion, I think Marion came with him from Indonesia. I mean, no, I think they met. They might have met in Seattle.
Interesting.
He went up north, and he was doing stuff for the Army. And he designed. Remember his hovercraft? He wanted the Army to use them instead of helicopters. Yeah, he was an engineer.
Yeah.
And
David, go ahead. I've got another name I want to throw out.
All right. Well, I just want to say one other thing. And then at some point, they were in Big Sur selling like jewelry they'd make or something. I don't know quite what. And then but got that place. I think he might have been given that place in Carmel Valley.
In the early days, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of vague memories. It might all be on his page on Cuke.com.
That's great. What a great job you're doing of keeping these memories, and so that we can enrich our lives and people can learn from them,
There's too many.
I know. It's fun.
What's the other name you wanted to throw out?
Well, I have a random memory, but it's a person who comes to me a lot. I didn't spend much time with them. That was Eileen Caddy. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm. Well, I don't recall it right now.
So she was basically the founder of the Findhorn community.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I never had anything to do with Findhorn except I knew Paul Hawken, who wrote The Magic of Findhorn.
So anyway, Eileen came to Green Gulch with William Irwin Thompson. Is that the right name?
Yes. I knew him.
She came, and we just I was like, I don't know, were we together in a former life or something? Like from moment one when I saw her, and I'm like you, I'm a 35-year-old young man, kind of, running around barefoot wearing a Japanese robe, right? And kind of, pretty naive, really, not very worldly, but, and she's an old British lady, right? She wore a British print dress and she just looked like a British lady, but boy, man, we made a really great connection. My first, I was hanging around when they were doing their conference. I guess I got to serve or something. So I'd see them from a distance and, bring tea in or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I came into the, I don't know, it's the place right outside the dining room that's got 2 stories, and there's an upstairs room at Green Gulch. I forget what that place is called.
Center.
Anyway. Yeah, Wheelwright Center. It's upstairs. They were up there talking, and as I passed, my memory was I passed her, and she goes, "Excuse me, young man, do you have any glue?" And I'm like, "Well, I do work in the shop. I can get you some glue." Yeah. What's the problem? She says, "Oh, the flower on my shoe." She was wearing a pair of British shoes that had a kind of some kind of flower on it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the flower on my shoe has come off. And I went, "Oh, sure, I can get you some glue." I said, "Well, what happened?" She said, "Oh, I was passing the pool yesterday and I got the urge to jump in. So I jumped in with all my clothes and I guess it came loose then."
That is funny, man.
And I went, "Okay, yeah, I'll get you some glue, lady." I didn't know I was naive. I had no idea who she was or anything. So in the course of the few days that she was there, we became very good friends,
That's funny.
Later I was outside doing something and she walked by me and grabbed my arm and put my arm in hers and said, "Let's go for a walk." And we walked down toward the ocean, And I basically said, "Who are you?" My naive version of "who are you?" And she goes, "Oh, that's another story." But she said, "I have a question to ask you." I go, "Yeah." She said, "I had a dream last night, and I dreamed of this kind of a house. It's kind of on a hill, has a strange roof, and she said, I've got some sense." And I said, "Well, that's called what is it? What's the cabin on the hill? It was that Turl Richardson made. You remember the one that
that's the Hope Cottage.
Yeah. I said, "Oh." She said, "Oh, that's it. Yeah." She said, "Is that around here? I dreamed about it." I went, "Yeah, it's right up there." She goes, "Oh, okay. Yeah." I'm like, again, in my mind, it's like, "Lady, who are you?" So then she started telling me about how she had heard voices that she called, I think, fairies, that had guided her to found some kind of little farm in a sandy area in Scotland. Am I right?
Right.
Anyway,
right.
Whatever. Yeah. And she told me the story. She said, I don't know. She said, I don't know about those voices. They're just, I don't know where they come from. They're strange, but she said, I have to be a little bit quiet to hear them. She said, when my kids were young, I used to have to go out and sit in the bathroom because I couldn't hear the voices when it was always noisy. So I'd have to sit in the bathroom to hear the voices. And I'm like, man, whoever you are, this is awesome. You would have liked her, David. She's in the realm of JB and Alex, and there are many, many, many characters that constellated around Zen Center.
I almost went to Findhorn. Katrinka was managing a very expensive place in Scotland that's owned by the same people that own the Pelican Inn, and she managed the Pelican Inn for 10 years, and they own.
Now who's Katrinka?
My wife. And so while we were there, the people who owned the Pelican Inn also owned a much more expensive place. I figured the cheapest room was £650 a night. And it was really something. So we got a free night there. And it was near Findhorn, but we didn't make Findhorn. And maybe it wasn't possible at that time. I can't remember why. It's right by some famous battle of Cottle something or. Anyway, anyway. So I never met those people, but I've heard about them. Well, I shouldn't say I've never met them. I might have met her when she was there at Green Gulch, but I don't remember it.
Right. She didn't ask you to glue on
a flower
a flower that came off because she jumped in the pool.
Right. I would have remembered that. All right. So how did you get involved with Harry Roberts?
He must have shown up at Green Gulch, and again, I had like many people. I mean, Harry had a presence, and somehow we started working together, and again, I sort of ended up over a course of I don't know how long now. Oh, I think I'm remembering the first time I saw him. Am I? I think he gave a talk in the Wheelwright Center, a brief talk, and then he was leaning on the rails on his crutch. He was using one crutch at that time, I think. He was leaning on the rail outside, just kind of staring into space, and I approached him and said something, and he said something back, and I'm like, So whatever course of events led to it, we started working together, I think maybe first because during work where I was helping him or something, and then later we would spend days off together. Doing various things, and then at some point in this journey, he needed to go back up to Arcata or someplace up in Humboldt. I think it was Arcata. No, wherever the Klamath River comes into the ocean is where he was from. He still had his house up there, and he was going to pack it up. So it was my job to drive up there with him. I went more than once up there, maybe once or twice. So he and I drove in his pickup truck up there and back, and we were just very, very, very close. I have, hundreds of pages of notes of things that he would say that I've written. I'm a note journal taker by habit, and I also I'm encyclopedic. So every story he would tell me, I would write down, and experiences we'd have, I would write down. And
well, what are you going to do with that?
I don't know, David.
Is it
turning
legible?
around.
Is it legible?
Most of it. I also like writing, so
Why don't you scan it and send it to me?
Okay, that's a good idea. That's the way we preserve it, huh?
Yeah,
and
right.
Someday somebody's interested. Someday somebody's interested. It's archived. Yeah.
Yeah. Although let me tell you, to me, I don't think anything's going to last very long, including digital information. But for as long as it lasts, okay, it's cool. But to me, the best thing is just like talking to you right now.
No, that's my faith in the ritual and ceremonial work that I do.
Yeah.
Is that you light a spark, and the spark lives. You can write things. Just circling back to where we started, but when I worked as a scientist for 25 years and lecture every week, I always considered my lectures I don't even know what to call them, but stories. I always felt like I was a storyteller because I felt like, you know what? Any piece of information I could say, they could look up. The information is not what I'm imparting. I wanted to impart energy. I wanted to impart why I loved what I was doing. And I wanted to impart why it's a mystery. So my goal always was just present this, present. And then, they would go away with a feeling that would then be a living spark that would lead them. Like I said, they could look up any information. Information is not, and of course I gave a lot of information, but that wasn't the point. Anyway, thank you for.
That sounds like something Harry Roberts could say too.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I learned a lot from Harry. He's a very dear man.
Yeah. I got to spend time with him casually because I have that place at Yvonne's, and I worked on it, and I took it it was a tack house, a little shack for saddles, and I turned it into a cabin with a deck and a picture window on the creek, and it was stuccoed and had the walls were totally changed, the roof was expanded, and I put it on like very, very thick rebar legs. Well, they weren't really what was holding it up, but Yvonne wanted chicken feet and called it the Baba Yaga hut after the Russian folk tale of the witch that would walk around in a house on chicken feet. But anyway, someone listening to this would have no idea who Harry was or what he did. He could have been a mechanic. So why don't you tell us what Harry did and what you learned from him?
Okay. Well, again, I'll do it by telling a personal story. Okay.
All right.
And maybe the personal story will be, a spark that will, or a seed that can grow. After being with Harry for a while and being close to him, one day at Green Gulch, we got in his pickup truck and we'd gone someplace, and we come back to Green Gulch, and rather than going down the road, we stopped at the top, and one thing Harry did fairly often was stop, which again was, pretty compatible with our Zen work and our Zen practice. But he would stop at, moments just to be. So we stopped the pickup truck at the top of the road, and he gazes off to the hillside on the other side of Green Gulch, over there. And as if he was talking to himself, which he may have been, I don't even remember, he just said, and he, like, this was not to make a point. This was not, it was just, he was, he was bubbling, he was feeling. He said, Eric, the hills are alive. Look at that hill over there. It's alive. And again, I got the sense that he was experiencing it. and just the musing were just coming out. He said, most people don't realize it. He said, actually, the earth is moving right this moment, And I'm like, holy cow, I'm racing around all the time in my mind, at least, and not appreciating, how everything's alive. Everything has and we don't appreciate it. And my own personal reaction to that at the moment was, I said, I'm so sorry that my life is over. I was 37 or something, David. I'm so sorry my life is done, because I would like to study the earth and try to touch that aliveness and somehow bring that aliveness, to awareness for others. Too bad my life's over, that I can't do that.
Yeah.
So a few years later, when I decided to leave Zen Center, I thought, hey, why not study the earth? Why not study something that would be interesting? Oh, water. Flowing water, rivers. Oh, I like that. And why not? It was really to bring that message that Harry shared with me in that moment about everything that we pass by so quickly has a spirit, has a depth, and we pass by it. And Harry didn't. I remember another experience. He was sitting out underneath a tree at Yvonne's. I came down. He was sitting in a chair, just sitting there. And again, as if he was musing to himself, he said, Eric? Yeah, Harry? Because I was picking him up. We're going to go work or something, go do welding or something. But he's sitting in a chair and he's not budging. And he said, you know what? And in this, anyway, this is out of context. I don't know if you can get the feeling for this, but he said, I just saw a flower fall off the tree. And I'm like, whoa. And he said, he said some version of, that's it. That's it. Whew. I was like, whoa. When do I allow myself to see a flower fall off a tree and then be moved by it? I mean, he was almost crying. So he had that. So that's a way of describing Harry by telling you personal experiences.
Well, but what was his training?
Well, see, I'm repeating things that I've read that Tim Buckley wrote and that Yvonne told me, Maybe I'll just tell you what he told me,
Yeah.
Because you can read the others from other people. Harry said he grew up with Robert, and I later learned that Robert Spot was a high man with the Yurok tribe in Northern California. And as I understood it, with my limited understanding, Robert Spot, who you could probably look up, was the last of the high men. I guess when we watched TV as kids, we called medicine men. But Harry always called it the high man. And Robert was trained in the traditional ways of a Yurok high man or medicine man. And turns out later when I read about it, Harry was half Irish, or maybe all Irish. I can't remember, but a good portion Irish is what Harry was. But his dad and mom lived in the Yurok area. I think his dad worked in a cannery, and a lot of the Native Americans, the Yuroks, worked in the cannery. And Harry, as a child, got perhaps, and I'm reaching here because I don't really memorize history stuff, but I think he was taken in by the Spot family, and Robert somehow took a shining to him and trained Harry from maybe a young age in the ways of the Yurok and to be a high man. And Harry felt like that was his inner nature. Even though he was probably born Irish or mostly Irish, that he was a Yurok and trained as a Yurok. One story he told me, another that was impressive to me, was he said, one day I went to see Fanny. And I'm like, well, who's Fanny? So, and I picture her as an old lady, an old Native American lady. And he said, and she had some kind of medicine too. I don't know what her technical term was, but she was a person who was deeply, deeply into the traditions there. And he said Fanny had a rabbit on her lap. And I said to Fanny, what are you doing? And she said, I'm helping it die.
Mm.
And he kind of inquired more deeply, and she said, it's the least you can do. So I'm just going to sit here as this rabbit passes on,
Mm.
It impressed me deeply,
Mm.
Yeah. So does that help give a picture of Harry? And
yeah. Well, he was also like a cowboy. And
he worked as a machinist.
Yeah, but he had a cowboy past too.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I actually didn't know that.
He told me that he was a dealer in Vegas at one point. And he said he could see through the cards. He said he would look at the other people's cards, like in poker or something.
Yeah.
And it said that what was on the other side, the face side, would flash at him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe the cowboy thing is.
No, he did a lot of things.
Yeah, I think it was a phase. It's, but, a lot. I don't. My memories. I don't know anymore a lot whether they're things I learned directly or other people told me, or even whether they had happened to me or something I heard. You know what I mean? But he told me that he had a natural plant nursery up in our Arcata area, wherever he was from up there. Do you know about that?
Actually, his native plant nursery was on the Russian River, not too far from us. I think it was not in Arcata. I think the natural plant nursery was on the Russian River, Guerneville. Guerneville is where it
was in Guerneville?
Yeah, he had a plant nursery in Guerneville.
Oh, well, that's nearby.
And he had two sons. I met both of them when he was dying. I met both of his sons.
Oh.
Completely different kinds of people, but his two sons.
Oh.
One of them painfully estranged from him, and and I Harry never mentioned him,
Oh.
And the other one, just a simple man that I imagine, again, like you, I have no idea the reality of the story, but I imagine it a craftsman, like a metal worker or maybe even a machinist or something. That is, Johnny was the one son, and then the other son. Anyway, I saw them together, and it wasn't comfortable to see them together.
Mm.
His son was not happy with, and Harry was dying,
Yeah.
Oof. Harry did a lot of things.
Yeah. He was a machinist. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, he worked as a machinist for quite a while. But he did a lot of things, as you said. He ran a native plant nursery. That he loved that. He loved plants.
He told me his native plant nursery was the best nursery on the West Coast. He really liked it. I didn't know it was so nearby.
Now, there have been people who told me. Now, I was still young and somewhat impressionable, and probably, I often have said to myself, and this is just a story, I've often said to myself that my fathering wasn't complete, so I had a number of apprenticeships with older men. And my story to myself was to kind of complete the edges of fathering that I didn't get from my own father.
Well, that was a gift from your father, your biological father, I'll tell you, if that's true.
Yeah, and
look at what you got out of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, Alex, I apprenticed to Alex, I apprenticed to Harry. You know, JB was more like a really, really beloved older brother. But then when I went back to the university at UC Berkeley to study, I apprenticed with an older a guy named Luna Leopold, who was the son of Aldo Leopold.
Oh, goodness.
So Luna was ostensibly the best river geomorphologist in the world at one point, you know. And when I met him, he said, "Whoa, I've been looking for a student like you." So I apprenticed with Luna, ended up living with him and working with him side by side and absorbing, you know, again, a lot of stuff that you can't get in words about how to do field research the way, you know, with the spirit of Aldo and Luna's spirit. So I think I apprenticed. What I'm trying to get around with, people have said to me that Harry had a knack for drama and a knack for exaggeration. So I always took everything he said for, you know, absolute truth. But he did have a way of pausing and, you know, saying things that were very profound in a way, you know. So I've often wondered in hindsight, how much of that was a little bit drama, you know?
Oh yeah, well it doesn't matter. He had a lot of insight. It was obvious. And there was always things to learn from him. You know what he said to me once? You know, Harry's thing was he was, you know, he smoked like some really good cigarettes. Did he smoke Balkan Sobranis?
I have no idea. He used to roll his own.
Yeah. And I'd bum cigarettes from him. And, you know, he got that, he had some sort of hepatitis, or he had a hip infection or something that came from, he had a hip replacement, and then he got a infection, and he said there's two types. One's like cow and the other's pig, and he's got the pig one, and they can't do anything about it. What was that about?
You know, I think you've said just about all I know. In fact, I've forgotten the cow pig thing. You know, good memory, David. Great. Yeah.
Well, it might not be cow. I remember pig. It was.
Well, he was doing some kind of research at Berkeley, and they had this stuff, and they were researching it. And he said everybody else died, but he didn't. But it ate up his hip. And I remember when he got his hip replaced, but that didn't work because he got his hip replaced. We took him to the hospital.
Right.
In Greenbrae, you know, and we got the hip replaced, and I visited him in the hospital. And and he's always had those crutches, you know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the reasons I turned to my movement and dance in 2018 was right before that I got both my hips replaced, and all of a sudden I realized I could move again. So I had. Oh my
gosh, really?
Yeah, you know, I had miraculous hip replacement. Well, again, as a research scientist, I found she's probably the best surgeon in the world for this particular surgery. She's been elected the only woman to be elected the president of the anterior approach for hip surgery, and she's moved on from living near here twice. But I flew to Seattle to get my second one done because, I mean, she's a miracle surgeon. I mean, I haven't been able to move this way since I was 18 years old. It's amazing.
Is that right?
Movement.
Wow.
Yeah.
My sister had.
Some people have.
My sister had a hip replacement, and it was outpatient.
Yeah, no, I went home the next morning. Yeah.
It's amazing what they're doing now with that.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm very, very, very like. Anyway, so Harry, back to Harry with his He had that problem, and he drank in the evening. He said it was, one of the things he said was it was pain control, but he would, about 5 or 6 o'clock, he would take his some kind of pain pills.
He had morphine.
Well, later toward the end, he had morphine, but the pills were just some kind of, right at the beginning, not when he was closer to death.
I think he wasn't taking the morphine. Was he?
Hal Balin helped him toward the end there.
Oh.
Hal's another story, but Hal Balin helped him a lot toward the end and was giving him whatever kind of drugs he needed. Hal was alternative, so he didn't, care what, just whatever helped Harry.
Yeah.
But anyway, Harry would take pills and drink 6, 7, 8 beers at night.
Oh, really?
Every night. Yeah, every night. Yeah, because I used to buy him the beers. He liked Anchor Steam.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff.
Get me the blue caps, Eric, not the gold caps. Get me the blue caps.
Yeah.
And I'd go into the liquor store and buy 3, 4, 5, 6 packs of Anchor Steam.
Sometimes I would get like a big bottle of Irish whiskey when I was working on that cabin, and I loved drinking Irish whiskey and working on the cabin, and I couldn't drink too much to stop me from working, or I don't know, I just didn't. If I was in that zone, if I was in that zone. If I wasn't in that zone, then a couple of shots would be all I'd want. But there was no limit to what I could do, and it wouldn't. I could be like very alert. And I remember Harry coming out and talking to me, and then he said, before he left, he said, it's better not to start drinking before noon.
David, I have a soft spot for Bushmills myself for various reasons. I was introduced to Bushmills by an old friend, who's now dead, like many of our friends. So Bushmills has a warm spot for me.
Yeah, there's Bushmills and there's Jameson. I tended to get Jamesons, and I could never keep track with which one was the Northern Ireland and which one was Southern Ireland.
You know what? I can't either. But someone pointed out, I said, "What's the difference?" I go, "What's the difference? One of them's Catholic and one of them's Protestant, dude."
Right. And
it's like, oh, okay.
But I didn't want to take sides, so I guess I didn't know. Incidentally, this is my 19th year without alcohol. So.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. I'm not an alcohol drinker at all, but I as a person who likes kind of strange things and researching things, a few years ago when I finally got to Paris, which I've been dreaming about my whole life. I grew up speaking French in Canada, so I could speak French pretty well. So I felt like I was.
Good Lord, you grew up in Canada and Japan.
Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force, so. Anyway, when I got to Paris, I got onto absinthe, and then I got to be a kind of, I'm going to nerd out on this. So I became like a super, super expert on absinthe, and I'm very snooty about absinthe. I found out the person who brought it back to the United States, made it legal finally, and I met the person who helped them make it legal in the United States, and then I found out what the best absinthe is, and so there's actually been times when I've been in a place in Paris where they just, anyway, where finally they refer to me. If someone comes in and wants to know about absinthe, they say, go ask that guy, the bartender.
Oh,
say,
wow.
I don't know.
Wow. Is it illegal in America still?
No, it's legal. It was made legal maybe 10, 15 years ago by, anyway.
Why was it made illegal?
The truth is, in about 1912 or so in Europe, something like that. I'm making that number up, but, something like that. The grapes had a blight, and most of the grape, or a lot of the grape harvest, tanked in Europe. So wine production went out for a couple of years. Well, absinthe had already been a drink that people were enjoying in the evening. So absinthe took over from wine. They say if you walk down the streets of Paris, it smelled like absinthe because everybody was sitting outside of the table drinking absinthe. And when the grapes came back in and the wine started producing again, they couldn't get traction because absinthe was the drink of choice. So the wine industry was like, holy cow. So in a nutshell, they demonized absinthe. And they put out what I believe, and I think most people who look at it factually believe, they put out a bunch of fake advertising about absinthe being dangerous and poisonous and hallucinogenic and all this stuff, which is absolutely not true.
Huh. That's very interesting. That's what happened to marijuana, too. Yeah.
So it got bought into. It was made illegal in around, 19 teens of sometime, maybe 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I don't know, something in there. It was made illegal. Made illegal in the United States, and it stayed that way for close to 100 years.
Wow, that's really interesting. Back then, that's where the phrase comes from, absinthe makes the heart grow fonder.
No, it doesn't. Is that true? No, it's absinthe. Yes, of course. That's correct. Well, you know what? Good absinthe is wonderful. It's just wonderful. There's a lot of, I'm very snooty about it, so I just think there's just very, very few good ones. But
it's too late for me. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, you shouldn't. You don't get started. And there's a ceremony around it. I've been doing chanoyu, tea ceremony.
Yeah.
Now for a few years, and the way you make absinthe is not tea ceremony by any means. But there's a fountain where you drip water in drop by drop by drop, ice cold water. You drop it into absinthe, and you do it 4-to-1. And every time a drop of water goes in, the absinthe releases one of the herbs that's in suspension, and it comes out of suspension, and it changes color and it changes form, and each aroma, if you're sensitive to it, emerges as each drop goes in, and after you've watched the drop, you drink one and then have another, and it's wonderful.
Now you said 4-to-1.
Water to straight absinthe, 4 to 5-to-1 is what you drink it at.
And you're putting it in one drop at a time and taking a sip between drops.
No, you don't take a sip between drops. You just let the aroma of the come out. You wait till it's completely looshed. It's called looshing.
Uh-huh.
So it starts off clear, this emerald clear, and good stuff is not colored. I'm going to tell you a story about that, but good stuff is not colored. Good stuff is just it's the color of the herbs. So it's this beautiful emerald color. And then as you put the water in, it becomes milky, and it looks like skim milk when you get done drinking it. When you drink it, it looks like skim milk because that's the louche. When each thing has come out of suspension, so it's cloudy. And so when I said the color is not fake, one of the things that people claimed back in the days to get it illegal was that people were dying from drinking absinthe, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, actually, technically, they had something to hang their hat on because people who were making fake absinthe to make a lot of money, in order to make it green, they were basically boiling copper and because it would become green. So you were drinking copper, which is poison. Not absinthe at all. There were a few people who died, but they were drinking the stuff that was, like bootleg crap that wasn't even real. Anyway, there's some great posters, David. You can look up on the internet. I befriended a woman who has the Absinthe Museum in Sur-la-Oise. It's a little town outside Paris. Anyway, she has the originals of these posters. There's a poster of the devil, got a glass of absinthe in one hand, and it's got a child in the other hand, and it's biting the head off the child. There's your advertising, right?
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's what they're doing to. That's the sort of extremes that certain parties in the United States are going to demonize
Absolutely.
others just as extreme with it. But I'm not going to say anything specific because I don't want to get into that.
No, we know that. We know that. We've seen demonizing, and this is a classic story, and that they could have something illegal for 100 years.
Yeah.
By demonizing,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What a long talk. Thank you for your patience.
I think, incidentally, I was wrong. I said Silas died December 22nd. He died December 12th.
His birthday was December 25th.
Oh, right. I'd forgotten that, but I remember that now.
Let me tell you a quick one. I once gave him a surprise birthday party. In June, because I thought, God, he never has a birthday. I mean, it's Christmas. What a ripoff. So I gave him a surprise birthday party in June once. Yeah.
Good for you. That's terrific. That's terrific.
Yeah. He and Amber lived with me in Mill Valley for a year or two.
Is that right?
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, we were very, very close.
I followed Silas and kept up with him different places, and it was really good when he went to Port Townsend. Then he really found I don't know, that felt better to me.
Yeah. One other dear thing that I feel so blessed by, sometime in the last year or so, he gave me his Roxu.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I have his Roxu that was made for him by Joshin-san.
Oh.
Suzuki Roshi wanted him to have it, so Joshin-san made one for him.
No. What's her name? The one before Joshin. Wasn't it?
I don't know. He said Joshin.
It's Joshin.
I don't know. I mean, he said it was Joshin-san. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, he knows.
Well, who knows? I mean,
she made
right.
me
I don't know.
She made me an okesa.
Wow.
When
Joshin did?
She was living at Tassajara when I was Shuso. You might have been there then.
I know you. I would have remembered you as Shuso. I don't. My last Shuso was Les K. I think. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Les K. was like the fall of '72.
Yeah, I think that was the last Shuso that I experienced there, and then I moved to Green Gulch in '72. I think. So you must have been after that, right?
I was 74.
Yeah.
And what was her name?
Oh no.
She, the sewer, we called her something Roshi. Oshida.
I never knew of her.
God, I can't remember her name. Anyway, she was there while Suzuki was alive. Now, maybe Joshin was there that long. She came in like Yoshida. That's it. I think it's Yoshida. She came in maybe 70.
You know? Well, that may have been, Silas may have been confused there. He just knew.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I don't know. I can't remember when Joshin-san came, but I sort of associate her with the second wave of sewing. And
probably so.
People get confused about these things. Also, let me tell you something about him giving you that Roxu. When Alan Marlowe died. See, Suzuki Roshi had made, you remember Jeannie DePrima, right? All right. Hey, you want to hear some Far Out podcasts? Listen to the two she did with me. Anyway, when she and Alan got lay ordination in the same ordination, like 1971. Could have even been 1970, because she'd been sitting since she was like 12 or something. But he did it so that their Roxus were complementary, so that you sort of needed both of them to see the whole thing. So that when Alan was dying, he talked to Coburn, and she was with Alan while he was dying. She stayed with him in Boulder, and Coburn was there, and they asked if Jeannie could have the Roxu, or told her if Jeannie was planning to have the Roxu. Coburn said no, it should be cremated with Alan.
Oh.
He wouldn't let them do that.
Oh.
Interesting,
huh?
Well,
well, maybe I'll have it cremated with me.
Well, anyway, it doesn't matter.
No, these things are, just another breeze in the wind. Going by. Going by.
So thanks a lot, Eric. Eric Larsen. Very interesting. I'm dying to hear what you have to say next week. Ha ha ha. Okay. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doghead Bandita and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.